I'm Clara Kraft Isono. I'm the director of the film. I also wrote the film and I part edited the film. I'm a filmmaker and I'm an architect, and that has really informed the making of the film. And the film it's I like to call it an essay travelogue, which of the Sri Lankan architect Jeffrey Bawa. So it's basically a film looking at his work, traveling around Sri Lanka, meeting his collaborators and friends and people he worked with to try and understand his thinking process, how he designed, why he designed the way he did. But it's also a film about architecture in general. It's a film about what it means to be a filmmaker too, and just questions around architecture, I suppose. So I came across his work as an architecture student in a library. I saw his work for the first time in a book. And that was a very long time ago. And since seeing those images, I then finished my architecture degree. I worked as an architect and slowly started getting into filmmaking, eventually going to film school. And the images from Jeffrey Bawa's work were always in my mind. And at one point, I decided it would be his work would be a very good work to make a film from, because of the atmosphere of his spaces, because of Sri Lanka as well. So it's not that I knew his work, and then eventually I decided I would make a film about it. Architectural photography was perhaps the first form of visual language in relation to architecture that I learned or came across. So I took photographs before I made films, and I looked at photographs of buildings before I made films of buildings. So photography is absolutely key to my understanding of architecture and how I have learnt about it. One thing that I find very interesting about photography in relationship to architecture is that we have this notion, and I talk about this in the film, we have this notion that buildings are forever. But in fact, buildings deteriorate, they fall apart, they get demolished, they disappear, they change, people change buildings massively. And sometimes photographs is actually the only thing we have. So photographs are the thing that stay forever. And films too, of course, or can. They deteriorate in different ways, but so I guess that photography is like the memory of architecture. Basically, what I've spoken about previously is the sound design, and how the sound design really informs the film and informs how you experience the atmosphere of the film. The score is something that we developed together with Jasmine and Mandira. I actually contacted Mandira is the violinist who performs the score. And I contacted her for a different reason originally, because she lived in a Jeffrey Bawa house. She's Sri Lankan and she grew up in a Jeffrey Bawa house. And I wanted to speak to her about that. And then it occurred to me, wouldn't it be fantastic if she actually did played the music? So it's a collaboration between Jasmine and Mandira and us. We spoke about the score many, many times, but Jasmine composed it. And what I would say is that if sound, I sometimes correlate sound to materiality in architecture. So I think that sound is like the material of architecture, because when you hear something, it gives you the sense of the place. So if it's echoey, it's a cold place. If it's, a very muffled sound, it's a carpet. It's a much warmer place. So sound really gives you a sense, a feeling of the materiality of the film. And I would say that music is also part of that materiality. It adds something different. It adds another kind of material, which is kind of undescribable. And I think it's incredibly important in the construction of the space of the film. I began by reading. There are quite a few books about Jeffrey Bawa. And a pivotal moment was meeting one of the authors of one of the books, David Robson, who is the kind of official biographer. And through I spent a lot of time speaking to him, and through him, he introduced me to some of the people that worked with Jeffrey Bawa. So I did various trips to Sri Lanka, which were just to meet people, talk to people, understand, no idea what the film was going to be like at that point, but I just wanted to gauge what was interesting to say about his work through speaking to the people he worked with or people he worked for, or etc. So there was a very long research process, incredibly long research process. And then after that, I knew who I wanted to talk to, and I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to include. But there wasn't a script per se. We just went and we filmed and we spoke to people. And I had certain ideas of scenes with the actor. But other than that, it all came really together in the editing. And I've had amazing responses. I thought that the structure was quite challenging myself, but it seems people kind of fall into it quite naturally. And, there's many layers. It's partly in French, partly in English. There's subtitles, there's voiceover, there's many things, but it seems to flow quite well. So I've had a very, very positive response. And a lot of architects go and see the film because, to be honest, architects love to see themselves on film. And they like to see films about architecture. So there's a real market for that. And so that's been very interesting.